Well, Emma, it's lovely to have you with us today on our Women Rock podcast. Really intrigued and excited to hear more about your career journey and what's led you up until this point of being Director of Technology at Denbigh High School. So I suppose, with that on the mark, could you just tell me about your journey to becoming Director of Technology and current role, and potentially how as well your previous experience has shaped your career path?
So that's a really key question, to be honest, to start off with. So I would always say to people, I haven't really had a career path. I've sort of had a career wiggle, really, in terms of it wasn't like I sort of started out when I was a teenager thinking I want to end up as a director of technology for learning. I'm the perfect example of a young person ending up going into a career that didn't exist at the time when I was still a young person. I was really shy at school. Right up until when I went to upper school, I was very low confidence, had some interest in technology as it was at the time, but that wasn't really being developed or coming to the fore. But I discovered a real interest in school at things like drama, communication studies,
Mhm.
taking part in plays, having the chance to make films. That really helped me to develop my confidence, and it led me to then go on to university and do a drama, film and television degree. I came out from university knowing that I really, really enjoyed working in a range of areas around filming and editing, but of course not a huge amount of careers, very difficult to get into. And again, what I sort of did from that point on was I actually took a year out and went and did care work for a year, working with adults with special needs.
Oh,
And
nice.
that was really, really interesting because it helped me realize that one of the things I wanted to do, whilst I'd got this real love of technology and drama and performance and things, I wanted to do a career where I could actually see the difference it made on the ground. And that real dose of perspective of working with, with adults with special needs, it was like, no, I want to use this for like a meaningful purpose. And so what I really ended up then doing was I did a range of different roles, but I became a promotions and communications manager for a Home Office Active Community Unit project based in Luton, which was all about developing digital skills with disadvantaged and marginalised communities. And that was the most rewarding job ever. And I only did that for
Mm.
3 years, the funding lasted, but it was a fantastic project. That then led me on to then become the head of a centre called, which was a city learning centre at the time,
Mm.
which I ran for 10 years, which was working directly with schools and with young people, and working with children of all ages. And that again was looking at the difference that using technology effectively could make to young people and their life chances, and ways in which they could express themselves. And then that job, really, when that came to an end, that was what then led me on to working at Denbigh in the Director of Technology for Learning role. And I did that role for 10 years at both Denbigh and across Chiltern Learning Trust, which is a multi-academy trust. And it
Mm.
really was, in terms of both of those roles, that was me really feeling that I'd finally found sort of my niche, I suppose, where it was maximising the opportunities that technology presents to really make a difference to the life chances and the aspirations and the attainment of young people in those schools. And it's not been an accident that I've ended up spending most of my career working in Luton, because I really love working with the Luton community. It's a
Mhm.
really aspirational community. The students I get to work with are absolutely wonderful, and it's been a real journey over that 30 odd years that I've been doing this sort of thing, but it's just been so rewarding. And so, like I say, I could not have started out saying this is going to be my endpoint, this is what I'm going to aim towards. And obviously working in technology, it's constantly moving, it's constantly changing, the priorities are constantly shifting, but that obviously as well just keeps it really, really exciting and really, really interesting.
Yeah, brilliant. And you said it well. You said I might have to steal this term, the career wiggle. I love
Yeah.
that. And it just goes to show, like you say, especially when it comes to technology, so a lot of the roles that we might have in 15, even 20 years, potentially even less, might not have been, it might not be in existence now, can come out of anywhere, because like you say, that speed of innovation, constantly moving in this sector, is just so great and seems to only be accelerating, really.
Yes, I mean, I started out thinking that I wanted to be either a director working in film or TV, or a camera person, and I find
Okay.
it amusing sometimes that I did end up as a director, but just not in the kind of field that I thought I was going to.
Yeah, you got 50% of the way there, but
Yeah,
no,
I'm
brilliant
part way.
space. Yeah, exactly. Amazing. And yeah, I suppose just to go in a bit more detail on that, as someone who's dedicated your career to that intersection of education and technology, what aspects of this sector would you say continue to inspire and interest you? And how do you really envision ed EdTech, so education technology, shaping the landscape for future generations?
So in terms of like the first part of your question, the
Mm,
elements of it that continue to inspire and interest me is I think that it's one of those areas of work which, when it's done well by schools and by trusts, not only does it massively prepare young people for sort of the future world that they're going to go out into, and I don't just mean the world of work, the world that they're going to live and exist in, but I also
mm,
think when it's done well, it offers real opportunities for accessibility and inclusion. So one of the things that really interests me is when you, and I suppose it goes back to what I was saying earlier about my own experiences when I was younger. You know, I was someone who was very quiet, who, you know, didn't stand out at all at school in my early years and everything. You know, was very much sort
mhm,
of middle attaining student. Um, but it was the fact that using a number of these tools gave me a voice, built up my confidence, gave me a different way to express myself. And again, then working with adults with special needs, you could see that again. You could see how people who perhaps, you know, even had like, you know, difficulties communicating in a traditional way could use technology to actually give themselves a bigger voice. So that's one of the things that continues to fascinate me, is the way in which technology can empower young
mhm,
people and can allow them to express themselves in a way that they might not have the confidence to do if someone was just saying, right, stand up and tell me what you think, you know, draw me a picture, do something here, that they might struggle with that. But actually giving them a way to express themselves through technology, sometimes some of those students that are some of the quieter students will become some of the most vocal, but in a different way. So I
mm,
find that really interesting and exciting. In terms of ed tech shaping the future educational landscape, I mean, I think this is going to be huge. I think that um, I've never seen an explosion like it in terms of conversations around technology, digital strategy, like we've seen in the last 2 years since generative AI emerged. You know, I mean, obviously we've had AI for years, but generative AI has been, and again, it's a cliche, but that thing about it being an absolute game changer. And I think what's
mm,
happened is that now it's really forcing the conversation. So schools and trusts that perhaps were saying, I'm not ready for this, we're not going to prioritize digital, we're not going to have those conversations, we're going to look at much more traditional forms of teaching and learning, are suddenly now having to have these conversations, because this is not something that you can shut outside the school gates. This is not something you could ignore. This is something that is happening now, that is in schools already, that young people are using, that staff are using. And I think we're seeing conversations now around how teaching and learning has got to evolve in a way that didn't happen as a result of a global pandemic. You know, at that point where everyone moved to online learning, we thought that, oh, this was going to be the game changer, and it wasn't. But
mm,
I think that in terms of, we're only going to see this accelerate, we're only going to see these conversations increase over the coming year. I mean, I look back at the year we've just had and how much things have changed, just in the school I work in that time. And obviously one of the reasons why I stepped back a year ago from the trust role was because
mm,
you could just tell at that point that AI was going to become such an enormous part of this. It shouldn't be the only thing we talk about when we talk about technology for learning, but it is obviously becoming an incredibly key central part of those discussions. And I can only see that growing and growing and growing, and that real need for anyone that works with young people to upskill themselves, to be aware of what the implications are, and that's whether or not you're planning on using it in the classroom. It doesn't matter. You know, you still need to be having these conversations, thinking about this as like school and trust leaders, and really going, okay, what are the implications for us, and how are we going to approach this head on? Because I think we've got a moral responsibility to do this for our young people. You know, we prepare them in school for every other aspect of their life, or we try to. We can't turn around with technology and say, oh well, this is too difficult, so we're not going to, or we'll get to it further down the line. It's like, no, we need to be talking about this and getting to this now.
brilliant. Yeah, completely agree. And it's the value in that of staying ahead of the curve, and as you mentioned initially, the benefits of that further down the line of giving a voice to those students who perhaps haven't found that interest yet that they have, and being able to open up things opportunity wise for accessibility, for inclusion, and really kind of seeing AI as an opportunity rather than a threat to helping us achieve
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
Great. And next question then, Emma. What would you consider your most significant accomplishments at Denbigh High School, and how have these impacted the students' learning experiences in tech?
I think there's been a number of accomplishments, but one of the things I would say at the start, before I even sort of go into more detail about them, is I've only been able to accomplish these things through being part of a phenomenal team at Denbigh. I mean, one of the things that has kept me at the school for 12 years, one of the reasons why I love working there, is that it's everything is a team effort. Everything is around like school culture, and you know, the really key thinking behind every decision that's made and everything that we do. And I think that goes right back to you know, I was originally appointed into the role by a phenomenal female leader who at the time was head teacher of the school and also CEO of the trust, and she just had this absolute cutting edge vision at the time for how technology for learning needed to be developed as a strategy in the school and across the trust. And that was at a time when no one else was having those conversations. You know, I mean, I'd been made redundant from my previous role. People going, no, we're stepping back from technology, not stepping into it. So that was incredibly visionary. The development of that initial technology for learning strategy, I think, was really powerful. And that idea of, okay, let's really look at not just, oh, what are we going to buy, you know, next for in terms of technology? Well, how is this absolutely going to underpin and support teaching and learning? You know, what are the overall priorities? How is it going to work to support that? And how can we support staff and students to engage with that? So the initial technology for learning strategy is something that, you know, we're really proud of, and the fact that that's evolved over time. And when we identified things like the fact that there was a digital divide with our students in terms of access to devices and technology, being the first school in the area to introduce a one-to-one device scheme and to give our young people the chance to have their own Chromebook that they could take home, that they could use at home, they could use in school. That again was transformational in terms of not just teaching and learning in terms of what happened in school in the classroom, but also the access those young people then had at home. And we never saw that more strongly than when a couple of years later, obviously the pandemic hit and all the learning moved online, and our young people were in such a better position at what was obviously an incredibly difficult time for the country as a whole, in terms of keeping that learning going and keeping that engagement with school going through what was a huge period of uncertainty. And I'm really proud as well that we initially introduced this in Denbigh. It was then rolled out to other schools in the trust as an example of something that worked really, really well. The other thing I'm really proud of is the opportunities that we've been able to give our young people, because, you know, alongside the development of technology, the development of our young people's digital skills and their oracy skills is something that we're really, really proud of, and their critical thinking and their creativity. And we've been involved in 10 years in the Apps for Good program, and that's meant that not only have our young people worked with industry experts to develop apps that solve real world problems, they've also had the chance to go and do things like you know, speak on stage at We Day at Wembley Arena. You know, they've had the chance to be on BBC World News. They've had the chance to speak to senior staff from some of the major tech companies and pitch their ideas to them. And we've also been involved in a program called Design for SDGs as well. And again, that's given our young people, and our we've had most success, to be honest, with our girls teams, which I'm really proud of. You know, they've been presented on stage in the main arena at the Beck Show, you know, in front of hundreds and hundreds of people. And these are students that are in year 8. These are, you know, these are not sort of 16, 17-year-olds. These are young students who at that point in their school life have had the chance to do something like that, have a campaign they've developed, presented in that kind of in that kind of environment. And that has been absolutely transformational in terms of then the aspiration of those young people and what's possible, and the fact that people do want to listen to them. Because one of the things I always say is, you know, sometimes people have a little bit of a preconception about what Luton's like. You know, we don't always have the best national reputation, which I will fight against all the time, because I think Luton is a fabulous town. But our young people are aware of that. They know sometimes how things are perceived, and any chance they get to break that sort of stereotype, I think is wonderful. And the thing we're doing most recently now, which is, which I think is having a huge impact on our students and is a really important thing to be doing, is we've developed a student AI steering group, because obviously as we move forward our work with the technology for learning strategy and AI, we want students involved in that. We don't want it to just be the senior leadership team making the decisions and thinking we know what's right for the children. We want them to be part of that conversation as well. So that's an incredibly important group going forward, that is going to continue to help us, I think, hopefully try and keep pace with all the developments in AI and in technology that are going to be coming up over the coming years.
Fantastic. Goodness me. It seems like there's a lot going on then, isn't there? And like
It's busy.
say
It's very busy.
yeah, super busy. And what fantastic success as well that you've had from those groups, as you mentioned, the sustainable development goals, designing things for them and getting opportunities to present their ideas. I mean, goodness me, I think that would probably make me pretty nervous presenting to a group of people that prestigious and large. But year 8, bless them, they must have absolutely smashed it. That's great to hear.
Yeah, they did. I'm not sure I could have done it as well as they did.
No, exactly. Oh, amazing. And then just wanting to move on to the next question as well, looking more from a career perspective. So considering the growing importance of technology in education, as you mentioned, how do you think schools can play a more active role in fostering diversity in the tech industry's workforce? And then what can they implement to encourage students from diverse backgrounds to pursue careers in technology?
I think one of the most important things that schools can do is to actually value the development of digital skills as part of the curriculum. And I think that one of the things that's a challenge at the moment, and I'm hoping we'll see sort of, some the curriculum review address this, with the findings from that, is that at the moment there is a very sort of traditional emphasis on traditional subjects, English, maths and science, as obviously as your priority areas. And it's very much down to an individual school or trust's own personal prioritisation of something like the teaching of digital skills as to whether it happens or not. And I think that until you start embedding the development of digital skills, and we also develop digital character, which is the idea about how you approach the use of technology as a young person and the decisions you make around how you're going to use technology. If you're not having those sorts of conversations, if you've not got that as part of the curriculum, how are you then going to start having those conversations about, and this skill set can lead you into this career? I mean, I talked at the start about how a career in technology is probably one of the least likely ones, where you're going to start off in your teenage years going, I'm going to be this in 30 years time, and be absolutely right and know exactly what the career is you're going to go into, because there's so much shift and flex. But I think valuing digital skills as a school or a trust to start off with is really, really important. I think developing links with industry as well. And, I talked previously about the work we've done with Apps for Good, the work that we've done with Design for SDGs. That's been really important for us, because it then means that our young people are having a chance to talk to industry experts. And talking to lots of women in the tech industry as well. And both of those programs, one of the things that we love is they're completely free of charge to schools. So we're not paid for these opportunities, but it's meant that, again, from a very early age, our children are having the opportunity to talk to people that have gone and women that have gone into these careers and are actually making a living from this now, and to hear about their experiences and what they've done. Because again, I know it's a phrase that gets used a lot, but the idea about if you can't see it, you can't be it. Our children, when they're in year 7, year 8, don't necessarily know what a career in tech looks like, don't necessarily know what the options are. They know the subjects they're studying, they know the GCSEs they're going to be aiming to get, they will be thinking about what they go on to do after school. But longer term, if you don't know anyone that works in that industry and you don't have that frame of reference, then how are you going to aspire to do that? So for us, it's really important that we make them aware of what is out there, and the range and the diversity, and I suppose almost that developing a set of skills that are transferable and flexible, so that when they do leave school, whatever they do decide to go into and have as a career, we've helped prepare them for that. I still think one of the most useful things that I did was to study drama, not because I wanted to go off and be an actress, but because actually that's what really developed my confidence. That's what really helped me feel more at ease in situations where I had to talk to different people. And again, we very much have the attitude as a school that if we can prepare our young people to be confident speaking in any social situation, that's a really, really good life skill. And if we can prepare them to know and understand how technology should be used, but equally how and when it shouldn't be used, we are hopefully then giving them a really good set of transferable skills that will be extremely useful for them as they go on in life and as they decide what they want to do longer term as a career.
Yeah, amazing. And just as you rightly said, giving them that commercial understanding examples of work as well, of those people that are really thriving in the sector, in the industry, to really kind of set out that path for them, and that kind of visionary is super important. Great. And so, I mean, next question then, Emma, I'd be interested to hear, in your experience, what are some of the unique challenges that female leaders may face when pursuing an impactful career in the technology sector? And how could they, importantly, overcome these challenges to achieve their professional goals?
I think sometimes one of the hardest things that women come up against is almost like unintentional bias.
Mm.
And one of the things that one of the books that I've read that I absolutely love is this one, the Invisible Women book, which talks about
Excellent.
obviously the inherent bias against women that exists in data, not because it's deliberate, not because it's been put there on purpose, but just because that is how technology has been developed over time. So already I think there's those challenges there. I think sometimes you have system leadership, which again, just because of how things have always been, is perhaps more male heavy in certain areas. I mean, one of the things that I think is brilliant is whenever I see sort of male leaders calling this out, where they know that actually, and again, it's not intentional, it's not been done on purpose, but where they know there's a bit of a disparity in terms of like female representation, calling it out, making sure that women get involved, giving that as an opportunity. Because again, it goes back to the, if you can't see it, you can't be it. I think it's one of the things that how you can overcome some of these challenges is call it out when you see it. Actually, I don't think there's anything wrong with saying, yeah, actually there needs to be more female representation there, in the same way that we want, diverse representation right across the board. But also, again, sometimes people don't realise we talk a lot about the inherent bias in AI, and we all know that AI is slanted towards I mean, I always give the example, I did it recently, going into ChatGPT and asking it to generate an image for me of a director of technology for learning. It will always generate an image of a man, and it will all be, it will always be a white man that is generated. I actually find it far easier to call out the bias that exists within AI because it's a machine and no one gets offended when you call it out, than actually sometimes with doing the same thing with people, and I think that's the thing, is being really honest about the conversations and the challenges that exist there. I think it's really important as women that you champion the cause. You champion other women. You highlight. I mean, one of the reasons I'm doing this today, the podcast, is the fact that obviously where you have got women who are doing really positive work, giving them a chance to sort of to call that out, to champion that, to promote it, and where you've got women. I mean, I feel very lucky because I get lots of really exciting opportunities and things that have only developed over time, where there are other women starting out, giving them those same opportunities, giving them a chance for their voice to be heard, shouting and celebrating as well, like I say, the men that champion the women as well. I think that's also really, really important. But I think that's the main thing, is really just not being afraid to have the conversation, not being afraid to call it out, and not being afraid to champion others and to showcase successes, and to just keep the conversation going, because it's only going to change over time. If you can make a difference, if you can actually help be part of the change, then you've got, again, that moral responsibility to do that, and to actually try and facilitate that, and to try and support that.
Yeah, amazing. And I love that example there that you gave them about ChatGPT, and being able to call out the bias in ChatGPT and having such a clear example of exactly what it thinks a director of technology should look like. But then we strip that back. Well, where's ChatGPT got that information from? It's
Yeah,
us.
and again, 100%, and it links back to, again, it's when we're teaching our young people about AI and how AI works and the data set it's built on and things,
Hmm.
it's a tangible example where you can show and say, look, this is, and I'm always really conscious when I give it as an example. If I'm a room, if I'm in a room with sort of mixed men and women, the women kind of smile and nod sagely, and the men look a bit uncomfortable, and it's like it's not designed to do that, because that it's not been done on purpose, it's not deliberate, but
Yeah.
it's that statement of that this is how things work at the moment, because this is how this data has developed over time.
Hmm.
This is something we need to be aware of, and I always say to people as well that is not then a reason for me to say, and that's why we shouldn't use AI. That's a reason then to say, okay, so this is the output that AI is going to give me. This is why we need to have those conversations about what do I need to put in as my prompt that ensures I get a much more diverse as a result of what I'm asking the AI to do. We if we knew someone that had got inherent biases, we wouldn't say, well, that's it, I'm just not going to talk to them ever again about it. You tease that out of them, wouldn't you? You'd want to have that conversation, you'd want to help them develop. And it's the
Yeah.
same with the AI. It's a conversation, but being aware of what exists in the first place is so important.
Yeah, exactly. No, thanks for that, Emma. Okay, brilliant. So moving on to the next question, I wanted to ask about your experience, of course, as a very successful female leader in this space. What advice would you give to young women who are just starting out their careers in tech? Perhaps what strategies could they employ to navigate the industry effectively and hopefully create lasting change?
I think the first thing I would say is be prepared to be resilient. And I don't just mean because you're going to face lots of challenges. I mean, you probably will, but that's life, to be honest. Be resilient in terms of when I was, like I say, when I was just starting out, I really thought, oh, okay, this is the career I'm going to go on and do. And of course, I didn't end up going on doing it at all. So by being resilient, I think, be prepared that you're to know your own mind and to accept when you need to make a change and you need to adapt your thinking and you need to wiggle that career path basically to go in a different direction, because as you get older you're going to learn more about yourself and what interests you and what drives you. I mean, like I say, I started out thinking, yes, I really want to work in the theatre, and I went and worked in the theatre for a while, and it was like, actually no, that's not the right fit for me. Really enjoyed it, but not the right fit. And it was that needing to be open-minded and try lots of different things to find out what actually made me excited to get out of bed in the morning, made me excited to go into work, made me feel like I was doing something that was really, really purposeful. So that idea about being resilient is really, really important. The thing about, if you want to, change is hard, change is difficult. If you're a woman going into the industry that you're going to be more in the minority, but go into that open-minded, be prepared that you might have to have some difficult conversations, you might have to make some key decisions at different points in life. One of the things that I believe in hugely is the old thing about find your tribe, find people through being outward facing. And one of the things I try and do is I try and go to online events, in-person events, where I can hear from a range of other leaders, a range of other perspectives, not just in the UK but abroad as well, just to try and keep an open mind. That's so important in terms of learning from others. And I think when you do that, you find other like-minded people, and then that's becomes your support network. Because when you've got people who sometimes, when you're working in tech or you're doing a role that maybe there's not a lot of other similar roles that exist, it can feel a little bit isolating. You can feel a little bit like, well, is there, who do I talk to? So take the time to develop that support network around you, because that's incredibly cathartic then and really, really supportive. And I know I have got an amazing group of colleagues and friends who not only will be really supportive and champion me, who also will be very blunt and very honest with me on certain things where when I need to hear some home truths or be told that an idea I've got is a terrible idea and it's never going to work, and I know that they'll tell me that with no agenda, with no kind of, and I think that's the time. It takes a while to build up that sort of support network, to learn who you can trust, to learn, who you can be open with. But that's so important, both professionally and personally, because it's not necessarily going to be an easy job that you go into. It is something that's going to require resilience and flex and change. But when you've got really good people around you who are going to take you on that journey and who know what it feels like, you will get there. You will 100% get there if you've developed that sort of group of like I say, of colleagues and friends around you. And don't be
Yeah,
afraid to
amazing.
isn't like, you know, if something feels like the wrong fit for you, you know, at a point in time, to also go, that's okay, that's not the right fit for me, and I need to, you know, look at other options.
Yeah, completely echo that. It makes such a difference having that support network. And I love what you mentioned there as well about them actually being like brutally honest with you when needed
Yeah.
at points as well, for your own good, I imagine, and knowing that you can rely on them for that to really
I'd
support
be
you and
very wary of
reality
someone
check
who
you.
tells you that you're wonderful all the time, because no one is wonderful all the time, you know. And the other thing I'd got on his is the thing about, you know, being kind, you know, behaving, you know, have a
Mm,
moral compass and treat people well, because in my experience, on the whole, if you treat people well, they will, you know, they will treat you well in return, you know.
yeah.
That gives me a kind of like a clear conscience in terms of, you know, if I work with people, it's not because I'm expecting something in return. It's the fact that I genuinely want to work with them, and we you know, we've got shared interests, and that sort of thing. And I think
Mm,
it's also as well the thing about giving back, being, you know, if you have an opportunity, if someone is kind to you, if someone gives you something, you know, to return that. So I mean, you know, as an example, when I did a sort of slight career shift a year ago and started focusing more on AI, there was a lot of people who gave me their time completely free of charge to give me advice and guidance, and that sort of thing. And now a year down the line, I'm trying to give that back to other people who approach me in the same sort of situation, because it's like, you know, people did that for me, so it's the least I
mhm.
can do to kind of return the favor, and give that back to some other people as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose just to wrap up then, if you were to take a big step back and have a look at, you know, the journey and everything that all your career wiggles and all the like that's got you up until this stage, what would you wish that you'd known when you did start out your career those years ago?
What I wish someone had told me right at the start, when I was very young and, you know, lacking in self-confidence and self-belief and everything else, is I wish someone had said to me that sometimes what feels like your biggest challenges and setbacks are actually your biggest opportunities. So as an example, for me, 12 years ago, it was being made redundant, which at the end, you know, at that point in time, felt like the end of the world, felt like my career was over. um you know, really just felt like the rug had been fully pulled from under me. And actually, what it was the biggest opportunity, because it meant I had to move on. It meant I had to refocus and repurpose. It meant that doors opened for me for things, like I said, the role I'm doing now would never have come along if I'd stayed in the role I was doing previously. And this has just been the most incredible, fulfilling role. And I think sometimes you need things like that to happen, because it
Mm,
shoves you out of your comfort zone. It makes you completely refocus and go, okay, so what is important to me now? What do I want to be doing? What, you know, what do I want to spend my working life doing? And you have to be brave, and you have to use that resilience, and you have to go, okay, pick yourself up, shake yourself off, and move forward. And like I say, at the time it feels like the end of the world, and I've had a few points in my career where that's happened, and you sort of think, oh my gosh, that's it. It really is. It's normally opportunity, but it's just come disguised as something else. And I think that's the main thing, is to always like go, okay, things will happen in life that you don't necessarily have control over, but rather than looking at them as setbacks, look at them as opportunities and a chance to evolve and to move forwards.
Oh, amazing. Super inspirational, Emma, and really reminds me of that quote, and I can't remember who said it, but something along the lines of what stands in the way becomes the way. Feels
Yeah.
very resonant of that.
Yeah, yeah, 100%, 100%. And it says more about you, and it goes back to be honest, this is what we try and teach our students in our schools, is
Mm,
it's very easy to deal with success. Everyone can deal with success. That's not a challenge. It's that thing about how you deal with failure, or when things don't go right. That's much more defining of you, and that's much more character building in every sense, because that's so much harder to deal with than when something goes right.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, Emma, that was, I'm sure, so much value add from that, and it was amazing to hear about your career journey, all the impactful work that you're doing at the moment, and really building up the future generations in terms of who's going to be having just as much impact in the technology sector, bringing up, you know, diversity, social mobility in a very important area. And yeah, I love hearing about how much you root for and rave about Luton. Seems like, yeah, absolute brilliant community over there, and absolutely lovely to have this conversation with you. So yeah, just big thanks, Emma.
Thank you for having me.